Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
Truth is the meaning of facts.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a weird bunch of vaguely agreeable terms. I mean,
They are. Welcome to the Comedians in Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Seitz. Say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
hi, my name is Dodd, and I am I call myself a creative strategist. I think that's probably the most appropriate term, but I'm a scriptwriter and creative strategist for YouTube consulting and different channels across YouTube. So I work for Screen Crush, TBNR, Team Theorist, and as well as some smaller channels that I do consulting for, like Mihai Zeta and Gentle Dude. So that's kind of the gist of what it is I do. I've spent my career, telling people about all the nerdy news they need to know. So I consider myself an entertainment journalist, as well as I try to bring a political analysis also to a lot of the media that we ingest, because I think that's important. That's my best elevator speech I can give you.
Not bad. Well, we're in the elevator, so are you ready to get tactical, Dodd?
Yeah, let me get my tactical water bottle.
And that's a critical. So you got to have the strategy to bring the water bottle and then the tactics to drink it. Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. All right.
It's true.
So the main point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any joke. So Dodd, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Sure. I don't think my comedy experience is as well refined as most, but I've heard of it in literature as there's the clown and the fool is how it's usually defined. I don't know if that's still true or not, where you have the fool as the person that's doing the crazy funny things, and then you have the clown who's actually supposed to be the person who's normal and who's supposed to present like a kind of a grounding standard for that. Because if everyone's crazy, then like the whole world's crazy. You kind of create a crazy standard, and then it just kind of fits into that world. And sometimes that works, like Looney Tunes and things like that works for it. But usually, like, to me, the best kind of comedies are things like The Office, where you have a Dwight who is weird and does weird things, and then you have a Jim who is really supposed to empathize with the viewer, and that's why he's always looking at the camera and doing that whole thing, because like that's to connect and ground it in reality. So I don't know if I would agree with the idea that you start off as that and then become the comedian, or start off as the comic and then become the comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you said?
That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think that in most circumstances that they play off of each other in a way.
Okay, I could go with that. So what about pantomime?
What do you mean?
The miming pantomime. We got the clown and the fool, which is with tarot, right? So I'm just trying to figure out, because you're throwing in a whole new mix. So I'm now trying to strategize.
Well, no, I'm not familiar with pantomiming. I'm sorry. That's why I'm trying to clarify.
Well, it's the mime. They don't speak. They just do the hand on the box scenario and versions of that. Yeah. All right. All right, ready
Well,
for the first
I
question?
think the idea with a mime, if you're talking
Uh-huh.
about like that relationship, then the the grounding relationship becomes you. A mime is in some place and doing weird things, and because everything around it is normal and the mime is weird, it is thus funny, right?
Mm.
So like that relationship I think still exists, but you're playing it with the audience. I think sometimes even you see comedians that are doing crowd work are turning the audience into the fool position in a lot of circumstances, because they're playing off of, oh well, this guy over here is weird, guys, have you noticed how that weird this guy is, kind of thing. And they're the grounding element that points to the weird thing. Like people talk about comedy as just um unrecognized truths, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yep.
someone that's essentially uh you have one person who's pushing up these kind of truths kind of things, and then you have one person that's validating that, whether that be the audience or the performer. I think that's how I would define those two relationships.
Interesting. You're taking a definitely a different angle to how I'm looking at it. So I like it. This
Yeah.
is very all right. So we'll go with the first question, which is about the role of persona in comedy. So how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
How much of like should it be?
Well, is it? Should it? What's going on there? Yeah.
It depends on the kind of character you're playing, right? I
Sure.
think that in YouTube we work with authenticity, right? That's kind of, you want to be authentic to who you are, and I think that you can see a lot of um people come from like you know low means and kind of like a grassroots kind of uprising because they come across as authentic. Whether they
Hmm.
are authentic or not is to be on a per case basis. But there is value in that. But I don't necessarily think that like I certainly wouldn't want I mean, this is in the sense of comedy, right? I'm thinking of it in the sense of performance in general.
Hmm.
Like if someone was playing a serial killer, right, I would certainly want them to be performing that and not that be the authentic person that they are, right? Like that's what I would hope to be the case. There's definitely a level of, based on where the medium you are, of how reflexive you are from yourself. And
Hmm.
I think that depends on what what medium that is. I mean, for comedians that are just in a stand-up context, I think that that character shouldn't be too far from yourself, because that's going to be like um something you've got to be in and have an interaction with the audience for like an hour straight and still be able to like maintain that up energy and stuff like that, right? So I think it has to be like close to yourself, but it has to be almost like an elevated egotistical kind of, like you have to pull that ego forward a little bit to be in that position. I think in a case, and sometimes that creates a character in and of itself. So
Would you say
but
that that's a moral position?
absolutely.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that
you're
would be
trying to
the
give the best
super ego.
performance.
Okay, yeah, you could say the best. So, so how I'm seeing is that you're taking the ego and you're going into the super ego, right? You're
Sure, yeah.
taking the moral position, and that's your new identity, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
when you're on stage there, I think that there's a value to that. Especially if that's going to be what gives the best performance. I think a lot of times if you see a comedian that goes up there and they're not confident, and
Mhm.
I think that applies to stand-up comedy or just any kind of comedy in general, right? If they're not confident in it, then it doesn't come across as funny, or it comes across as funny, but they are the joke, you know?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Laughing at him, right?
yeah, and
Absolutely.
and I think that so there has to be a little bit of that super ego. And yeah, no, I think that's still the moral position if you're trying to create the best performance.
I
Beady
think
beady
yeah,
beady
yeah, I
beady.
think your perspective is struck a chord with me. So, but
Yeah.
let's move to the next question. Punching up versus punching down. So, where do comics versus comedians stand on this? So,
Hmm.
I'm gonna put in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Is this like a true historical anecdote thing, or just like a mind riddle thing?
I don't know. Is
Um,
it?
I have no idea. I've never heard that story before.
Okay. Well, that's the question. I mean, how would you take it? Not hearing the story before, does it
Would
matter if it
that
was, does it matter if it's even real?
say it all again?
Well, the question, so let's, I mean, the idea is, did it happen, right? Do we know if this is a fact? Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Uh, I mean, I can't think of a historical thing to do it. I could probably Google it or something like that. But no,
I don't think
I
you
haven't
get
heard of
stumped
that.
very often. Yeah, you don't get
Yeah,
stumped very often, so I got you.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
I think this is a historical event that Dodd got stumped on this question. So
yeah.
that's where it ends. All right. Well, let's go to the next one. So would you say the audience agreement with the comedian is a form of permission or alignment?
The audience agreement with the comedian is a form of
Uh-huh.
permission or
Or
alignment.
alignment. Yeah.
Hmm, hmm. Um, to an extent, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I
Oh,
mean, because like I've listened to comedians before where I think it crosses a line, and I've like, all right, I'm not giving them any more of my time, attention, or money.
right.
Um, and like, I don't like to talk about like canceling or put it out on a big platform or anything like that. But I do believe that we vote every day with our dollar in thousands of different campaigns and elections for everyone else. And
Mhm.
like, if someone does something that loses my vote on there, right, and it crosses the boundary of what I can think is like a conceivable thing, because I have pretty thick skin. I'm more than willing to laugh at myself and welcome others who do. If it crosses a line where I think that like, hey, you're targeting when it really does feel like it's punching down, right? I think to your last extent, like I think if I was going on the clarity of like punching up or punching down, I don't think that I do think that there is a moral obligation not to punch down. If you have a platform, then you have a moral obligation not to punch down. It doesn't mean that everyone always does. I think there's plenty of people that do punch down, and I think that it makes the ecosystem worse. Um, and like, I'm not in charge of the ecosystem. I'm just one of a part of it. But I do think that if, for instance, if that kind of toxicity was banned from YouTube, YouTube would be a better place, and YouTube would be a better platform for a lot of people to watch. Um,
What
and
about freedom
so,
of speech?
well, I mean, I've had my own flax with that on the other side, right? I've been, um, you know, uh, I've been demonetized for things that I've said before. So I think the perspective that I have is that if I have been lost my, and I still can post um on that channel, but I can't monetize off of it. So in a lot of these circumstances, it's not necessarily about freedom of speech, it's freedom to monetize that speech. And that's something that is an agreement between me and the company that owns the channel, right? That's where that relationship lies. They don't necessarily grant First Amendment rights. Um, and so that's a reality that I've had to face before. And so my thought process is, if I've had to face flack for things that um, you know, I think were uh vague jokes taken way out of context and hijacked out of context, like intentionally trying to misinterpret the things that I was saying. And because I left it vague, it's here nor there. Anyways, with such scrutiny on me for that, then the people that are doing a lot of harm and damage should face equal scrutiny, or there should be no scrutiny. There can't be what we have now, where it's scrutiny on one side a lot harder than the other. And um, so I think that if we're in a place where we're going to be that scrutinous um, on this side, that needs to be congruent. If it's not congruent, then it needs to be open.
Okay. So that, all right. So that's the strategies. You got to have it where the basis must be basically free speech, is what you're saying.
I would like for it to. Me
Okay.
personally, on the moral standards that I would like to, that's I yes. But the problem is that it's on YouTube.
Right.
YouTube doesn't grant free speech, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the problem is that MSNBC doesn't have to grant free speech. CNN doesn't have to grant free speech. Those companies themselves don't have to grant free speech. Whether or not I agree with that right doesn't matter because they're the ones that decide it. And whether or not I think it's unfair doesn't matter. You know, personally, if it was for me, I would be on the side of freedom of speech. But if we're going to be on the side of protected speech, then it should create a healthy ecosystem, right?
All right.
It
Yeah.
should be benefited towards doing that more. And I don't think that means that getting rid of all kinds of edgy jokes. I think that means like if you're creating content to specifically target people on race or gender or things like that kind of stuff should not be allowed. Technically, still allowed in terms of service right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to be scrutinous and demonetize people for memes, then we should be on that, right? If we're not, then let's not, right?
Right.
I would err on the side personally if it was me on that had at the helm. I would be on the side of free speech.
All right. Well, that's where it should be. We are all in
Yeah.
agreement there. All right. Cultural translation of comedy. How do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
Culture is different. I mean, I think you said it right there in the beginning of it. I mean, like
Right.
different cultures have not only different standards, different ways of interpreting things, but different social contracts in general. So I think that we've seen a lot of that this past couple of weeks with certain comedy festivals and how certain jokes might have landed over there that did not land back in the US. Um, so, but yeah,
Well, then would you say that truth is the meaning of facts?
truth is the meaning of facts.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a weird bunch of vaguely agreeable terms. I mean, uh,
They are. They are. Oh,
truth
let's put it
is
in
the
this kind.
meaning of fact.
Yeah, exactly. So would you say truth plus meaning equals facts?
Um, I mean, I guess it feels reductive though.
It is. It is very reductive. So
Yeah.
then put a bow on it because I think if I say it in these terms, you may concur. Truth minus meaning equals facts.
What does truth minus meaning mean?
Literally as a formula. If you were
I
identify
know, but
your
what
definition,
would truth without meaning mean?
that's what I'm saying is if you could subtract these two, it will equal facts. Does that have any value to you? This as a thought?
Well, I mean, objectively, if I'm understanding meaning correctly, right? If we're talking about uh, truth and then that it means something there could be things that are true that don't mean anything to me that don't impact me um
And if you take
indefinitely,
that
right? If like
out,
someone starts spitting stick bug facts at me, that might be great. Those things may be true, these may be factual things, but they don't affect my
right.
day-to-day life, so they have no
No,
meaning to me.
exactly. And I think that's why the reduction of subtracting it will actually identify that it has now become a fact by going through this process. I know it's a very weird question. I think you're the closest person that's even gotten to the point where they understood the question. So I'm glad that that you hit it. So let's get back on a normal track. Advertising and self-promotion. Who
Mhm.
advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
The comic?
Have you seen it? I mean, is there a hierarchy or just doesn't matter?
I'm guessing you're saying comic as in the standard that you asked in the
Yeah.
beginning. So like the guy that's being super goofy and like putting his himself in the center of attention. I'm thinking he's probably going to be advertising and promoting himself the most, even if it's just through his actions because of how he goes through there. Whereas the comedian, maybe more reflexive, maybe somebody that people identify within the audience, but it takes a while to even really recognize who he is. He's kind of someone who blends in with the background. And a magician, the whole entire point of that being sleight of hand, being to be deceitful, to be unnoticed. If it's a good magician, then they wouldn't promote themselves very heavily. So they'd be that's I guess my general thought process just off of the vague terms of the comic magician or and
that's a very, very insightful description there. So I definitely like that. Okay. So censorship and offense. So does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point like a magician?
Wait, what is a magician in this context then? Because what is
You just defined it. You just defined it. Is the
someone
one
who's trying to I mean, then that kind of performance with like sleight of hand kind of thing. I mean, rephrase the question again. I'm sorry, I'm lost in the context.
So you're creating the context. The way you define it, that's the placement of the context. So does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point like a magician?
No, a comic does not avoid offense.
Okay.
And I would say yes on the other one that the comedian and magician court it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Okay. Who survives better in a cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
Only in the cancel culture environment, isolated within it, or afterwards too. Because I would say the mudslinger thrives the most within the cancel culture vacuum, not after. But there is if it's someone who would get the momentum from the cancel culture and be able to build it up afterwards to continue it forward, I would say it's the comedian because they're going to be able to be the smartest one in the room, to be able to point out and observe what is and what isn't before making those actions. Or even the magician, possibly, if we're defining it in this vague context of being deceitful and like kind of sleight of hand and not pointing out those kind of things as much. But I mean, I'm still kind of confused at what the magician would be, but the comedian, the magician would probably be able to gain momentum from cancel culture more, whereas the comic is more likely to fall during cancel culture. And the mudslinger will thrive during the bubble. But people will eventually get exhausted of whatever it is, whether it be the controversy of it or whether it be from them parting ways and just not coming back and shedding off. But afterwards, like this slinging the mud eventually gets exhausting and people get numb to it. So it's not sustainable unless you find a new place to sling mud and then you can sling mud endlessly.
I like it. That was the most insightful answer to that question I've heard yet. All right. So, Dodd, are you ready to enter the multiverse?
Sure. Yeah, I felt like I already entered the multiverse with the magician and the comedian and all that, but
absolutely. Well, you did, but now we're officially going to enter. We're going to actually pass through the threshold. Okay. Board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. If comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
Repeat that one more time.
So you're tracking the board game Zoomcast, right?
Right.
Okay. So you have to choose your character. So are you
Mhm.
going to compete as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
Foley artist.
Okay. So does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
Orchestrated sonically.
Excellent. Well, that's consistent.
Yeah.
So then I guess I'll throw it out here. Do you, in whichever way you want to define it, do you feel personally that you associate more as a comic or a comedian?
Um, I think more of a comedian in most roles. Um, yeah,
All right.
yeah, yeah.
Excellent. All right. So here on the Comedians and Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And the previous guest was Thomas Terry Williams. And his question for you, Dodd, is if you could bring a comedian who has passed back to life, who would you bring back?
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams. That was
Yeah,
easy.
yeah, that's an easy one.
Is it?
Yeah.
Now, what makes it so easy?
He was gone before his time, and he, lived a amazing legacy. And you hear a lot about people after they pass, and you usually hear all of the dirt too.
Mhm.
Wasn't too much dirt with him,
Yeah.
and I just think that he was it would be him or George Carlin, right? I think George Carlin had a lot of wisdom and was way like beyond his time when he, as far as like putting comedy being unrealized truths. I think he was probably one of the best at that.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, but no, Robin Williams, yeah, I think that one. Um, I would love to hear Robin Williams talking about what AI means to him today, and like how that affects like his performances, like how he feels about those kind of things, right? With like Zelda Williams recently came out and was like appalled at like people using her dad's likeness or trying to kind of like recast him in other things. And like I
Mhm.
would really like to hear what he would have had to say about that. I think that would be, you know, I think that would. I feel like he was one of those comedians that was like in a very cheesy way could always make you smile even like in the worst times kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we need more of those versus where we have a lot of like George Carlin's now where it's like I don't know if I can curse on here, but
If you
shit's
must.
he would just be like, well, shit's fucked. That's where it is right there. See that? That's where it's
Yeah.
fucked. Um, kind of thing. Like I think that we need more comedians that can like Good Morning Vietnam this shit, you know.
Yeah. I'll go with that. All right. Last question. Legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Type 5 survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
I think the comedian's cultural point of view will be more timeless. I think that to me, there's a lot of times where you don't really remember characters as much. And like when I think of like comics like um I feel like Adam Sandler was a good example of like a comic that was just constantly, even though he does stand up comedy and things like that, and maybe some roles he might play more of a comedian, but like most of the time he's just kind of like making fun of himself and being a goofball and like I don't know, like his movies didn't like. I remember when I was watching like Huey Halloween as an adult, and I was like, man, this just doesn't hit as much anymore, right? It seems kind of like self centered and egotistical, but in a way that's not really like artistic. And like you know I would much rather, you know, see someone use comedy for insight because I think we remember things. Um, like just as I was saying before, that comedy's the unrecognized truths. We remember those truths more when they're funny, and I think that you know, comedians I think are better at being more direct about those truths than maybe comics are. Not to say that they can't, but like I would that's how I'd advocate for that.
All right, excellent. Well, Dodd, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me at Ruse_Bane everywhere. That's WRUSE_BANE. You can find me on TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We are rebuilding a channel from the ground up. So definitely go check us out on YouTube. We got some cool videos coming out. I'm talking about alien Earth and how it can be a metaphor for AI and the threat that it provides to capitalist structures. And then Peacemaker. We're also talking about Peacemaker season 2 and how it is a metaphor for incels and the radicalization online. So some spicy topics. But yeah, no, some cool stuff. Super excited to talk about it. If you guys are interested in that kind of thing, check out my socials.
Excellent. Well, Dodd, thank you so much for being my guest. And for everyone else, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.